It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. It's Friday. It's time for our Agile, Not So Agile Daily Stand Up Podcast. And I want to start this one off with a question. Do you believe in miracles? Now, if you remember in the Olympics, we had the Miracle on Ice, where we had the U.S. Olympic team that trained so hard and ended up winning the gold medal. If you can relate to any boxing match or any Olympics, the Olympics are pretty popular right now, you'll know that there's been lots of miracles that have happened. But I'm not talking specifically about a sporting miracle. I'm talking about a miracle that has transformed who you are, a miracle that was more than any coincidence could ever bear, but something that made you understand or believe in something that you couldn't explain. Now, for those of you who don't know, I am a person of faith, and I have strong bond with the fact that I know with 100% of my being that miracles occur. But for those who may question this, or for those who want to know more about miracles and whether miracles are real or not, I thought it would be cool to tell a little story and give a couple of examples. So I remember I was at an event, and there was a young man, and he was probably, I'm guessing, somewhere between 8 and 10 years of age, and he was running around as 8 to 10-year-olds will do, and having a good time at this event. It was at a church building, and this young man was climbing on something he probably should not have been climbing on. And before anyone could stop him, the young man had fallen and injured himself, and he busted a portion of his head open, and he had a large amount of bleeding, and things weren't so good for this young man at this point. He had a really bad injury, and it was just a freak accident. It wasn't something that there was a dangerous position there that he was being endangered. It was just a really weird accident. And I remember implicitly that through the power of prayer and through the power of asking, this young child had much more that they needed to accomplish. This young man had so much more that he needed to do. It wasn't his time to leave and come back. It wasn't his time to enter a post-mortal existence, if you will. And I remember that it was one of the worst scenes I'd ever seen. And I don't have an extensive medical background, but I remember walking over and I helped calm down the parents. I helped get emergency services, contacted, and we realized that where we were, that it was going to take emergency services a very long time to get there. So we encouraged the parents, since the hospital wasn't so far away, but we knew that there was a backlog of things that were happening. It was bad weather. That I encouraged them to just take their child to the hospital and that everything would be fine. And I don't know where that counsel came from, because normally I would be the first person to say, don't break that rule, wait for emergency services and let them decide. But in this case, I just felt very strongly that they could just take their child and that they would be fine and that everything would be good. And I also got the distinct impression that the parents were more worried about this than they needed to be. So I let the parents know, hey, I don't claim to be a miracle worker, but I can tell you with assurance that everything's going to be okay and that you can relax. Now, on the surface, that sounds like really good advice, but at the same time, it was also really bad because, well, what if something would have happened to that child and they wouldn't have made it, and it was a result of them moving the child? I mean, it could have gone a way different direction. But in this case, they took the child and they went to the hospital, and they were completely calm, and the child was fine. Minimal stitches, a staple, and that was it. It was done. And this parent came back to me and they asked me, they said, and they said the doctors were so confused. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, you saw and I saw that this was a wide open gash and that there was heavy bleeding and that there could have been, a broken bone. And I'm like, yeah, it was bad. And the doctor who saw him, the attending doctor, was like, no, are you sure this accident's happening the way you described it? Because what I'm seeing here isn't indicative of that. It was just a small cut. And it was just in an inconvenient spot, and that's it. And it was just so interesting because I know what I saw, and this guy knows what he saw. But is believing in what you see the miracle, or is believing in things that you can't see the miracle? And I think that faith is the opportunity for us to believe in things that we can't see. And I think that many of us lack faith. Therefore, we also lack miracles and dramatic things that happen in our life. Now, I don't wish negative things to happen to anybody, right? I'm never want to say, oh, I hope something bad happens to you. That's just not how I'm carved. But I do think that we have opportunities through either positive or negative experiences to reflect and to experience miracles of our own if we reflect properly. And I think too often we discount those. We treat them as if, oh yeah, that was cool, or that was really cool, or it was a coincidence, or oh, that's a miracle that happened. And those kind of things never happen to me. I hear that all the time. And I'm going to twist it and talk about another person that I know. And it was a gentleman who told me he was going through some really bad financial struggles, and then he needed help. And, being the person I am, I was definitely willing to help. But I said, one condition: I wanted to see if he had his finances in order. I wanted to see if he had a plan for his bills. I wanted to make sure he had some level of accountability for how he was spending his money. Right. So I said, if you have a budget set up that you can show me, it doesn't need to be anything formal, just something where you show this is what I spend money on. This is how much I have left at the end. I'm happy to help you, get to where you need to be, and, hopefully teach or inspire you to uplift you to do the things you need to do. Well, this gentleman proceeded to do this, and within his budget, he had a line item for lottery tickets. And it was like $20. I'm like, so you're trying to tell me you spend $20 a week on lottery tickets and you're wondering why you're broke? And his answer was, well, I'll never have it all if I don't try. And I thought to myself, I said, do I look at this and say, wow, that's a positive outlook on life that if you don't try, you'll never get it? Or do I look at this and frown on it and say, yeah, but throwing money at this isn't the way that you're going to, if you took that same $20 every week and invested in something different, that you could have way more in return over time than you'd ever have as part of a lottery winnings, because your odds of winning the lottery are so small. You have greater odds of getting hit by lightning while riding on the back of a dolphin and getting bit by a shark at the same time. I mean, it's just the odds of you winning the lottery are so minute that I think people don't take it into consideration. But the value was in that he sensed that if you don't try, you'll never succeed. So I guess tying these two stories together now, we had someone who saw and believed what they saw, but then went to a doctor who didn't believe what they said, but believed what he saw, and was able to make minimal adaptations. And this child is perfectly normal and has a perfectly normal life now. Everything's fine. Or are you the person who knows that the only way out is XYZ, that you approach that with vigor, and that even at your own personal detriment, you're willing to try hard, with the hope that even if there's less than a 1% chance of you being successful, that at least you put your best foot forward. And I think that where we need to be is kind of a combination of the two. We can't do it to our own self detriment, but we need to definitely be assertive in trying to work out how miracles work in our lives. We need to be receptive. And if you're not receptive, the miracle will never occur. And I think that there's countless editions of this in books of prayer, books of scripture, in the Bible, in the Book of Mormon, in the Quran, in the Talmud. There are countless depictions and descriptions of miracles that occur. And I think that if we look at those miracles and apply the teachings from those miracles in our life, that it's going to help us understand better how miracles work and help us to create an opportunity, an environment where miracles can happen to us. So I hope you have an amazing weekend. And on Monday, we got something special for you. It's another Agile Expert series. So please tune in on Monday. And as always, we encourage you to have an amazing weekend. Stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.